You're very welcome back to Counterpoint. On this episode, I'm going to be talking to solicitor and councillor Malachy Steenson about all things flags on poles and also about the events in the United States, horrific events overnight of the assassination of a very well-known political figure, Charlie Kirk, and what that means and how we can interpret it and what it means for over in Ireland. So, but before I start firing questions at you, Malachy, and you're well able for them, I know, because I spoke to you before, let's just have a look at this clip from starting with Taoiseach Simon Harris.
We're sure as hell not going to allow the far right now hijack our flag.
We so far have resisted a lot of what has transpired in other societies. We are at a tipping point in Ireland. I'm concerned about it. And I think this has to be resisted. We have to do it in an intelligent way.
Dublin City Council says it's taking this issue very seriously and will meet with senior Garda representatives in the coming weeks. How to decide on whether the tricolour represents patriotism or far-right aggression will be a sensitive issue, but the council says it intends to get the input from locally elected representatives before deciding on how to deal with and potentially police this matter.
So, Malachy, whatever about Simon Harris, the Taoiseach there is saying we need to resist this in an intelligent way. But how can you get into the mind of somebody who puts a flag up a pole?
What does he want to resist? Irish people flying an Irish tricolour on Irish streets. There's nothing more natural for a citizen of any nation to do than to proudly fly their flag. And Micheál Martin talks about a tipping point. We arrived at a tipping point in November 2022 when the government decided to use vacant office buildings to pile migrants from mainly Birmingham and London into on the assumption that these people were fleeing war. Now, I know Birmingham and Bradford and places like that might be, dangerous places at times. They certainly are now under Keir Starmer. But they're certainly not fleeing war. And as we pointed out, most of those people came in without any documents. The government ultimately accepted that position. And here we are now, having increased the population both through the asylum process and through work visas and student visas by 2 million people in the past 20 years. And yesterday the government has said that the population is going to go to 7.5 million, another 2 million within 40 years. Now, I would suggest that that's probably closer to 15 years rather than 40 years. They are changing the whole demographic of this state. And they are making Irish people and people who have a long history in this country, going back generations, making them strangers in their own country. That is the tipping point. And, we have Simon Harris there who talks about, we can't let the far right. Who are the far right? The far right in any normal society were the people who tell you what you can't say, the people who bring in hate speech legislation, the people who tell you can't protest, the people who will try and engineer elections where they'll instruct their councillors around the country to follow the diktat of the leader rather than to follow the wishes of their constituents in the presidential election, for instance.
Now, they will say that that's just part of the political game of engineering.
Well, it is, but if you look at the present lineup for the presidential election, we effectively have 3 Fine Gael candidates. We have Humphreys, the unionist, whose grandfather signed Carson's oath to maintain the link with Britain. Of course, she fits in well with the blue shirts. Then we have the man standing for Fianna Fáil, who's only recently joined him and who voted for Fine Gael in the last election, and who I understand was approached by the Fine Gael leadership to run for them as an MEP in the last election. And then we have Catherine Connolly, who was a member of the Labour Party, which had no difficulty in going into power and into government with the blue shirts and Fine Gael, as they call themselves now. So you have effectively 3 Fine Gael candidates standing. So Simon Harris, on that basis, will win the presidential election regardless of which candidate runs.
But I mean, do you not see any development past those 3 in terms of the nomination process? We all know it's down to 4 councillors or 4 councils or 20 members of the Oireachtas?
Well, I don't think anybody will get through the council routes. And I mean, in Dublin next Monday, we have, I think, 15 candidates coming in, some who I've never even heard of, and I doubt anybody else has.
But why do you say that, Malachy? Is it because they're under political instructions?
Oh, well, I think that, firstly, Fine Gael have been told quite clearly, and they have, I think, 12 members on Dublin City Council, and they have the Lord Mayor's position. They've been told not just to vote against candidates, but to frustrate anybody trying to get through that route. So I suspect on Monday that Dublin City Council will vote not to nominate anybody, because you have the left who back Connolly, and you'll have Fianna Fáil who are not going to vote for another candidate. And I mean, there's little point in the Constitution saying you can have this route of 4 councils if the political parties use their numbers to block that. Now, there is the news this evening that Maria Steen has got, I think, 10 Oireachtas members, and possibly Independent Ireland will row in with that if they're not already in the 10, which would give her 14. Can she make it to 20? I suppose we'll know in a couple of days. So that looks like the only possible runner. And I can't see any of the other councils. If you look at Dunleary,
she would be the only independent candidate.
She'd be the only independent candidate.
And if she did get through, out of curiosity, how do you think she would run?
Well, I think she would do reasonably well. Will she win it? I think she'd just end up short of it. I think the other political players will transfer to each other. Like, really, what's the difference between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael?
Well, it's a uniparty, yes.
So they will transfer to each other. Yeah. Connolly's people, where will they transfer? They certainly won't transfer to Maria Steen. So I think she could fight a good battle. But I do think had the provisionals ran Mary Lou MacDonald, we would be in a totally different race, and she could have potentially taken the Rs. But for whatever reasons...
You mean Sinn Féin?
No, I mean the provisionals.
Oh, right.
The provisional alliance, as they were called initially.
All right.
The name Sinn Féin is something that they should actually do the honourable thing and drop, just as others before them did when they had abandoned the policy of ending British rule in Ireland. But I mean, the current provisional Sinn Féin are the only part of the Republican movement, apart from Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, who initially started out in the Republican movement. The provisionals are the only ones who have implemented British law in Ireland. The other two just implemented it in the 26 counties on behalf of the British government.
So how do you see, like when the Taoiseach is saying, we're going to do something about this, but we need to do it in an intelligent way. I mean, how do you interpret that? And he's talking about we're close to a tipping point, and I'm getting concerned about it. And
well, what's he going to do, right? What's Simple Simon going to do? Are they going to get up poles and take down flags, or are they going to expect some minions in the council to do it? And I can assure them that if they take those flags down, bring it on, because there will be twice as many flags up, and there are tens of thousands of flags ordered. And I have to give a big shout out to Andy Quirk, better known as Damo and Ivor, who has got a huge amount of flags and donated them to different areas and donated a huge amount of flags at the rallies. And without him, the thousands of flags that are around the country wouldn't be there.
But do you think that there would be a certain reluctance on behalf of the ordinary workers in Dublin City Council to be going around taking out?
I think certainly, and I think that's one of the problems that they have.
I wouldn't be doing.
Well, and I don't think it's because of any fear or anything like that. Yeah. And certainly, there shouldn't be any fear. I mean, people might take their photographs, all right, but that would be the limit of it. But I think that genuinely the workers within the City Council, and I know that they've made it clear to management that they're not going to go out and take them down because they believe.
No, I didn't know that. Right,
that this is our flag, and they're not going to go and take it down when they hadn't been instructed to take down, for instance, Palestinian, Ukrainian, or Pride flags.
Actually, I was just guessing at that might have been the position they take for obvious reasons.
Well, obviously, there are some proud nationalists within the councils.
But do you see, is there a connection here, do you think, between you shall not use your flag this way to the hate speech bill, which is on the back burner?
I think it's the very same issue. You'll do as you're told. You'll say what you're told. You'll think what you're told to think. And if you stray outside of any of those boxes, then, we will come down on you. How can you say to somebody, well, what was your reasoning for putting up that flag? You know, this is our flag, it's our nation, and we will put it up around this whole island to claim our territory back from the globalists that are running this country, like Harris, like Micheál Martin, who don't give a damn about this country. They are only interested in what their masters in the European Union think.
Well, they would say, no, we've signed, you know, we've entered, we had a vote in the Dáil, we entered the EU Migration Pact, we've signed international agreements, this is the way, you know, that go back decades, you know, we're bound by international law and our ethics, and of course we're following European policy. That's the position they take.
Well, firstly, the role of any government in any independent sovereign nation is to its own people, not to some federalist power outside. This is why we got rid of the Brits in this part of the country, and we're still trying to get rid of them in the 6 counties, because we wanted to govern ourselves. We didn't want to be governed from London, nor do we want to be governed from Brussels. And if a law enacted in Strasbourg is detrimental to the needs and the wishes of the Irish people, then it should be ignored. And, you know, they tell you that that all of these things are for our benefit. We have no benefit. We can't even control the price of petrol, the price of fuel, the price of electricity, the price of gas, because the European Union says we must have competition and all of those things. And when you look at international agreements.
But do you believe in price controls then?
Well, I think, for instance, the one way to reduce the price of petrol and diesel is to take the 68% tax off it and to cut the huge tax take that is on all of those things. And I think when we had just the ESB and Bord Gas supplying gas and electricity, where you had the state and the people as the shareholder, they could defer a dividend if the prices were going to go beyond the reach of the consumers. And that was a simple thing that could be done. But now that can't be done. But if you look at, for instance, the triple lock now, we were given the triple lock as a guarantee during, I think it was either Lisbon or one of the referendums that we were told to go back and vote the second time. That was the guarantee on the second run of that referendum. And now, just like they told us, oh, well, there'll be no interference with corporation taxes, which was the other thing that was sold to get it through the second time.
And if I recall correctly, in Lisbon too, we'd have control of our borders. I mean, that's why, I mean, just as a matter of disclosure, because you brought it up, just literally, you know, within the eve of the vote in the Dáil on joining the EU Migration Pact voluntarily, I was trying to help Una McGurk put a motion into the High Court to actually stop the vote from taking place, because on the constitutional basis that the people have made this vote in 2009, and this is a matter that needs to, that the Parliament has to put this matter to the people. It's not a question for the Cabinet, or it's not a question for the Oireachtas. It's a question for the people. And
but the political establishment in this country doesn't care about the people. You know, we had the figures yesterday that 3 in 5 young people are getting ready to emigrate. Yet we're importing people. You know.
Well, can we just maybe move on to what's happened in the United States, which is this horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk, which is shocked people, notwithstanding the media coverage. You know, the actual assassination itself has been fully recorded. It's going around social media. It's a horror, and it's changing. It seems as if it's brought the temperature to a completely new level in the United States, and it has a meaning over here. So I just wanted to talk about what all this might mean with you, Malachy. But first I want to play the tape. For those that don't are not familiar with Charlie Kirk, this is a Gen Z spokesperson, really, I suppose, for the MAGA movement, which is probably the best way of putting it. And he's gone around to universities in the United States talking, and he's a critical thinker, quite clearly. He believes in rational discussion, engagement with people, notwithstanding the fact that he knows that his ideas will be contrary to the existing beliefs that other people have, but he believes people need to talk to one another. I've only been discovering him in some detail over the last 24 hours, I think, like most people. But I can tell you because I've seen it, the Generation Z have been into this guy for quite some time. Some of them don't like him, some of them like him, but the important thing is that he's engaged them. And that's a very, very interesting, very interesting thing to bear in mind when you have a listen to him here. So here's a clip of him talking on campus quite recently.
I got a question.
Sure. What was your name again? I'm sorry.
I don't think I told you. My name's Mercury.
Nice to meet you. Okay, I've been asked that question a lot. First of all, that question should not even have to be asked, but when people stop talking, really bad stuff starts. When marriages stop talking, divorce happens. When civilizations stop talking, civil war ensues. When you stop having a human connection with someone you disagree with, it becomes a lot easier to want to commit violence against that group. What we as a culture have to get back to is being able to have reasonable disagreement where violence is not an option.
You think that's not emotional violence?
How is this? What is emotional violence, by the way? I don't know what that is.
It is harm intentionally perpetrated on another person, another human being, that is intentionally targeted at their emotional well-being.
Okay, so feelings mean nothing to me. Isn't why we had the First Amendment to try to push our boundaries and to hear things that might make you mildly uncomfortable?
This doesn't make me mildly uncomfortable.
Does it make you very uncomfortable?
It makes me angry.
So that's Charlie Kirk, and he's been very much in the trenches. Obviously, highly regarded by the MAGA movement. Obviously, very unpopular on the other side. But one of the other interesting areas that he got into is he was basically predicting, look, if we don't start talking to one another, this is going to end up in political violence and people are going to get killed.
And this is the real results of the naming and the name calling of people, which the political establishment in this country has engaged in. They've called people like me right-wing, fascist, Nazi, all of these things, as they did to Charlie Kirk. And this is the result of it. And Donald Trump addressed this in his address late last night, that it is those people demeaning people who they can't argue with because they have no argument. If you listen to what Charlie Kirk says, and people should go and look at it, there's hundreds of videos out there of him, asking simple questions and being prepared to debate, and what their hatred for Charlie Kirk was, not because he's young, not because he's prominent, not because he's turning point US, but because he wants people to critically think. And that's what we've lost. People accept nonsense, like in that clip you just showed. People accept things that they know are blatantly false because they're afraid to stand up. And what happens in this country and now in America, and I mean, this is not the first attack. We had Slovakia in last year. A politician was shot and injured there. We had a politician in Spain last year was shot and injured. And indeed, on the day the Slovakian politician was shot, there was an attempt to kill me during the course of the European and local elections. And there's a man before the courts in relation to that. So this is all brought on by the rhetoric and the viciousness. And if you look at how the left today responded disgracefully to the death of Charlie Kirk, gloating over it, and certain pubs even in this city putting up posts saying, he supports gun law, basically good enough for him. And other people, and prominent people, or people who would think they're prominent on the left, people who pander to all of this woke liberalism, putting up disgraceful posts. I saw one guy today putting up a post and a picture of Kirk out of Coronation Street. Oh, I heard Kirk died last night. If this was the other way around, remember what happened when George Floyd was killed? A man who had nothing, a drug dealer, strung out, attacking the police, shot dead. And we had almost riots on the streets of this city when people in this country never even heard of them. And, it is the rhetoric from the establishment that creates the situation where somebody will, as they tried to kill Donald Trump, now they've killed Charlie Kirk, and he won't be the last. And this is the environment that we're living in. And, I mean, I'm no stranger to assassination attempts. Right through my political life. I mean, as my son said after that most recent one, he said, you're not the first to come to try and kill him. And because of your incompetency, you won't be the last. So those are the risks that people like us take on a daily basis. But it doesn't deter us. It makes us more determined. And while there's one Charlie Kirk yesterday, there will be 100,000 Charlie Kirks in the coming weeks.
Yeah. What I find extraordinary, Malachy, is that this thing of this type of speech or whatever you're saying is verboten, and these are the labels we are now putting on you, and a lot of that is coming from the state sector itself, and also
Simon
through
Harris himself said the far right putting up flags.
Yeah, and through
ordinary, decent, working people put those flags up.
Yeah, I know the trope of the far right, and there's no evidence of that, certainly in the last general election. But the point that I was getting to is that I had Una McGurkin here recently for a discussion, and one of the items we touched, we were making interconnections, but these were all legal points. But one of the legal points we touched upon was the ruling in August from the European Court of Justice on a referral from the High Court, which now means that on top of all of the other things we can't talk about, we will now, our exchequer, it would appear, will have to compensate any asylum seeker who arrives into Ireland and doesn't get a house, doesn't get, and all the other material benefits.
And that case was funded by one of the NGOs that we fund. And these NGOs, just like USAID was scrapped, we need to cull all of the NGOs. And one of the things in relation to the flags, we were told, they're following on from England and the Tommy Robinsons and all of this nonsense. They're actually following on from us. When we started the protests in November 2022, we said, and I said publicly, the only flag I want to see on these protests is a tricolour. And then Andy came in and that all developed. And in Easter 2024, I asked people to fly a tricolour for Easter in their garden. And a lot of people did. And we have pushed it and we've developed it. And we caught the left in a pincer movement in the past couple of weeks, because the flags had gone up in areas like Ballyfermot, Coolock and other places, and we strategically waited till silly season in the media to put them up on North Strand. We knew that the North Strand and Ballybock and the inner city would be the key, as Dublin Central is the key for everything in political life. And we decided, and we knew exactly how the left would react. And then Labour, true to form, Darragh Moriarty comes out, and by 5 o'clock on Cudahy's programme on News Talk, he had accepted that we had set a trap for them and they walked in. So if they take the flags down, we win. If they leave them up, we win. We've already won the flags war. And people up and down the country are putting up flags. And just to flag two things for you, Grana Heron, which is the political party which we hope to launch in the next couple of
so this is your next
months.
This is your next step.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're calling it?
Well, the working title is Grana Heron. That probably will be the name that will emerge. We're organising a rally which is tentatively set for the first Saturday in October, which will be in the middle almost of the presidential campaign.
That's the 5th of October.
Which will be the 5th of October. And our current position is in relation to the presidential election. If there is not a candidate that we can support 100%, then we will be launching a Spoil Your Vote campaign. And that will be asking people to go out, take your vote, and write whatever you want on that ballot paper, as long as you don't write a 1 beside anybody's name. Write anybody's name you want on it. Write whatever you want. More housing, better health system, an end to immigration. Write that on it. And we want to encourage people to go out and do that. And we need numbers. And that will be very significant if we can get the numbers on that. Just as the April the 26th rally, 50,000 people frightened this government for a number of reasons. And, people think rallies, maybe, what do they do? This government, and this is why Micheál Martin is talking about a tipping point. 50,000 people on the streets from across the social spectrum. Young, old, people, healthy people coming, elderly people coming in wheelchairs and on crutches, almost every one of them flying a tricolour. That scared the bejesus out of the political establishment,
but
both left and right.
Would your proposal to suggest to people to spoil their vote in the presidential election, which is on the basis that the candidates are all basically from what you would call the Uniparty?
Actually, all from Fine Gael.
Yeah, from
so far,
right. So, but if an independent candidate were to break through,
well, then that's what I'm saying. If there is no candidate that we can 100% support, then But
if an independent candidate does come through, then you will support.
We will discuss that then, and it depends who that candidate is. And, that's something for down the road. Okay. So, And I think that will be a very good campaign, and it will give people an opportunity that they didn't take, unfortunately, in the last election to change this government. And it'll send a very clear message. And we want, should this Spoil the Vote campaign run, that will be the story of the election internationally. We don't care about what they say here. You know, this is an international project, and we have support from right around the world, as do people fighting the same battle in England, in France, in Spain, in Hungary, in Poland, in every country, and in America. And we're all fighting the same battle for the survival.
I get that, but how would you respond to the criticism that, look, on the one hand, you're complaining about the Simon Harris giving instructions to the Fine Gael councillors throughout the country, basically to spoil the vote for an independent candidate. I mean, that's the interpretation of it. And now you're calling for spoil your presidential vote to send a signal to the government. You see those things? Do you see that?
There's no comparison. He's instructing people who have been elected by people in local areas to represent them, not to represent the party. The TDs can represent the party if they want, and he can have a whip over them. But to instruct councillors around the country to not alone not vote for another candidate in the council. And a vote from the council isn't, it's a nomination. It's not saying, I support your policies. It's saying, I am prepared and I am confident enough in my own politics to say, I am prepared to let you go before the people and let the people make up their mind. Yeah. That's what Simon Harris is afraid of. He's afraid that one of the candidates that gets through the council route will beat his candidate. And that's their fear.
Well,
anyway, I don't suspect he'll be there in 6 months.
Well, look, we'll see. He's always welcome, Simon Harris, to come into Counterpoint for an interview, as is Micheál Martin, Taoiseach, and he's been invited, obviously. I also invited Tony Holohan as well, but then he stepped off the hot spot. And many others. If you want to come in and have a chat, delighted to have you. I don't see a queue at the door yet, but that'll change in time. Just watch this space. But what I wanted to get to was we now see that we've handed over border control to the bureaucrats in Brussels. This remains, especially in Britain and also in Ireland, a matter of huge public concern. I accept that there are people that have contrary opinions about that as well. They're not happy that it should be a matter of such concern, that we should just let in whoever arrives. But I just thought we'd go to a clip from Charlie Kirk, who had something to say. I think it was just a few months ago to GB News. I'll just have a listen to this and see what you think.
The question is macro Islam compatible with Western values? Macro. Of course it's not. There are three major reasons why. Islam does not believe in freedom of speech. Islam does not believe in freedom of religion. And Islam does not believe in separation of mosque and state. Those three things are antithetical to the West. In a Muslim majority country, most Muslim majority countries, you cannot criticize the Prophet Muhammad. In most Muslim majority countries, you do not have the same robust freedom of religion protections. And finally, whereas we in the West are very careful to try to intermix religion and state, they are commanded to actually go into the state and try to change the state to be more Islamic around the core pillars of Islam. And the last thing I'll finally say is I cannot see a single Western country that has become more Islamic and has become a better place to live that is happier or freer.
By what metric? Just happiness, quality of life?
Everything from quality of life, from cultural cohesion, from whether people want to live there, prior to the native-born fertility rates.
Again, people watching this will say is your criticism of the religion itself or not Muslim people? Because there are British Muslims who have been born here.
But you don't have to caveat it all the time. I know you guys have to because you're British and all that. A culture ceases to exist when we don't have unified language, when you cannot talk to your neighbor. I'm not discounting that there are good individual Muslims. The question that we need to reckon with the West is Mohammedanism compatible with the teachings of Blackstone? Is it compatible with the legacy of Wilberforce?
All right.
And the great thinkers that have come from this country? And I will say, no, there's a reason why when you go to these Islamic countries that you're not going to see the equal protection of rights, that you do not believe in universal human equality, that you do not believe the same things that we believe in the West. And I think it's suicidal to import millions of them.
Isn't Charlie Kirk making some valid points there, especially when you look at underneath the concerns of an awful lot of people that you engage with when in your movement?
I think nearly all of the points he makes are very valid, and they relate to this country just as easily. And, you know, only when the European crime reports came out there recently had we found out that the Gardaí had accepted that the attack on the army chaplain in Galway at the army barracks was a jihadi attack. And remember, we also had the two gay men beheaded in an Islamic attack, and another man lost his eye, who could have been a third victim. Luckily, he survived and was able to identify the perpetrator. One of those, I can't remember, was him or the guy who stabbed, I think it was him, there was €300,000 found in his flat. What was that for? We had other attacks in Dublin, you know, and you have to accept that the people, because it's a factual statement, that the people who are carrying out these knife-wielding attacks, the random knife attacks, not the normal crime robbery attacks that we always had in Dublin. And, you know, you get people say, when you talk about immigrants and the connection with crime, you're told, oh, we have our own criminals. Well, of course we do. But that doesn't mean we go and import more. And there seems to be, within sections of the young Muslim community, and, you know, they're right, there are good Muslims. It's just as there are good Christians. But there are bad Christians too. And there are bad Muslims who don't seem to care. If I can give a comparison, the Republican movement, when it was involved, and any Western military movements who are opposed to the state, when they're planning any operation, the first thing they plan is the getaway rather than the actual operation. And they want to get back to base safely. That doesn't apply with Muslims. They don't care if they die during whatever attack they're doing or end up in jail. We've had the attack on a Garda in Capel Street. We've had the one that we're not allowed to talk about, the children who were stabbed in Parnell Street. We've had the guy in Stony Batter. And those three characters, and the guy who's up for killing the woman in Belfast, remember he was caught down here. They were up on the same day in court, and they were all pleading mental illness. Right?
But Malachy,
now, if all those people have mental illness, the first thing we should be doing at the border is having a psychiatrist there, and not alone checking their passports, but if they're mentally ill, back on the plane. We can't deal with the mental health problems that we foisted upon our own young people. And I say that deliberately because the amount of mental health problems that our young people have because of the way this country is being run, and particularly young men, and the rate of suicide, which is totally ignored, of young men and young girls. We have the highest rate of suicide of young girls in Europe. Now, that came as a huge surprise to me because I thought we would have had the highest rate of males. But none of these things are even discussed in the media. And every town and village you go to in this country, there will almost, I mean, where I live, for a short period of time, there was something like, in a 5-mile radius, in the course of a year, 8 or 10 young men who committed suicide. That is something phenomenal in a country this size, in a country that was based on family, a country that was based on community, a country that was based on this collectivism and this, we're all here together.
But how do you, so what's your, sorry, I'm just a bit confused here. What's your link to that and you know, Islam, which is Charlie Kirk is saying is incompatible with Western culture, can't be assimilated, doesn't want to integrate. What's the connection with that and what you've just said?
Well, you see, we're told now we must have multiculturalism, not integration. Multiculturalism, you're over there with your gang, and we're over here with another gang, and we don't mix. There are elements within Islam who believe in Sharia law, and we see in Birmingham, they're almost implementing it, and in fact they are implementing it on the streets, and the British government, whether it was the Conservatives or now the Labour Party, actually do nothing about it and allow these things to fester. We saw the whole treatment of women and young girls in the grooming gangs in Britain, which were ignored by the political class because they didn't want to be seen to be anti-Muslim or to be targeting the Muslim community. And there are scores of men now eventually convicted, hundreds of young girls destroyed. And you have to come to the conclusion that if we're bringing in them same type of people from Pakistan and from those areas, which is predominantly who were in the grooming gangs in Britain, they're doing the same here.
But, you know, what I find extraordinary is that we don't... Well, firstly, the National Union of Journalists has an agreement with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees from a long time ago, but, you know, back in the, you know, I think 2014 or 15, but it was renewed 2023 to basically say that if any migrant of any kind, especially asylum seekers and refugees, is involved in some kind of high-profile crime, that the ethnicity will not be reported.
No, and they somehow become Irish if they've been given citizenship down in Killarney.
But I don't think most people understand that this is actually by way of agreement.
The National Union of Journalists should actually change their name to the National Union of State Propagandists, or, you know, Pravda, maybe they'd be better being called. But you see, we don't. Sorry, I just want to ask you this point as well. We don't record the data which links ethnicity with crime. No.
And you might say, oh, we can't do that. Well, it's actually been done.
Why do we record what colour eyes you have? Or what height you are? Or what build you are? Or what part of Ireland you come from? But we don't say that these people are not born nationals.
But I don't understand that, Malachy, because it's recorded in detail, for example, in Denmark, who actually have got a grip on all of this. I mean, you can actually see, you know, the amount of rape and attempted murders and violent crime by ethnicity, by non-Western and Western cohorts, as well as native Danes, and the data's there, and you just have to look at the data to see this isn't a question of racism. It's not a question of anything other than security, isn't it? Security of the communities.
The reason they don't tell us is because it proves the points that we've been making. They don't want you to know. Look at Aisling Murphy. They told us she was strangled. Turns out she was stabbed multiple times. While they thought it was an Irishman, the feminists and the left were having protests and marches, and all Irish men, it was the education system, and all Irish men were potential women killers. When they discovered he wasn't Irish, that was the end of it. And then they targeted her partner when he came out after the court case and said exactly what had happened. He was the enemy then.
So, in terms then of the final question for you, look, lots of people have been amazed at the turnouts that you have organised on the streets of Dublin in particular. You're now calling for a potentially, depending on the outcome of the nomination process, a spoil your vote campaign around the presidential election. You know, that's going to come and go. It's a lot of attention now at the moment, but that's going to come and go in a matter of weeks. And then we're into the winter, and we're into, you know, what happens next.
We're into more of our own people lying in doorways, sleeping in tents, while the state prepares modular homes and new homes for people who just arrive into the country.
But what? In other words, what's next for your fledgling movement?
Well, I doubt that. I wouldn't accept that our movement is fledgling. It's growing hugely. It may not appear to be. Well, we just have to keep doing the work we're doing. We have to keep doing the work that, for instance, because Charlie Kirk was killed in America, it doesn't stop that work happening in America, nor will, you know, the reaction of the political class. I mean, the political class, or the establishment here, will clamp down on us. They're fighting for survival. And let nobody out there be in any doubt that Simon Harris is fighting for his political life, as is Micheál Martin. And the destruction of this country will bring them down. And this government, I don't believe, will last. I think it will last, you know, another year and a half, maybe. But then I think we'll be into real change in this country.
And along the road from here to there, in your prediction, what are the flags? What are the red flags? I'm afraid to say red flags.
What are the green flags? What are the green flags?
What are the green flags you see that would cause the coalition government to sunder?
Well, I think when we get through this budget, after that, when the American foreign direct investment stops coming in, when the capital taxes that those companies are paying, and they've already gone down. I mean, they got a slight uplift because the pharmaceutical companies pumped stuff into America ahead of the tariffs, but that's gone now.
Yeah, that's called front running.
Yeah, so that's money. Well, they've got it this year; they're not getting it next year. And you see, the problem we have in this country is around 500,000 people work for the state in one way or another, for semi-state companies, directly for the civil service and all of those things. About 250,000 people work for the 33,000 NGOs we have, and another 250,000 are probably on welfare. None of those people are at a point where they're going to rock the boat, because the partnership deals and the deals done by the unions will keep the civil servants' pay increasing ahead of inflation, despite what they say. Welfare will always go up in the budget. It's the ordinary workers who are caught in the middle, and they continue to fund the NGOs. So it's the people who are outside of that, who are working for a living, who are trying to find childcare, trying to get their kids to school, paying twice the price for diesel that they paid last year or the year before, paying twice the price for electricity, paying twice the price for tolls on the roads. You know, you take an average man driving from Dundalk to work in the IFSC, right? Every day he will pay €30 in tolls, right?
So he's
5 days a week,
going
through the tunnel, right? Because it costs him more in time to go the other way. €30 a day, 5 days a week, that's 150 quid. Nobody can sustain that. And now that the likes of Microsoft are demanding that people actually now go back into the office, that's going to drive those costs up for people.
But when you take the point you're making, final question.
People need to get a lot more pay.
Yeah, no, I get the point you're making, but just to focus on the numbers for a second. I'm always interested in numbers when they come out, right? But you're saying that when you look at the public sector and you look at the dependence on the public sector, you look at the social protection sector, and then you look at the NGOs, which are really just another part of just the outer rim of the establishment, right? You're looking at about 1 million people, roughly, that, based on the numbers that you gave me, I think, right? But how are you going?
That's enough to keep the establishment in power.
Yeah, but fine. But how are you going to attract Middle Ireland out in very, very substantial numbers, more than that are there at the moment, in order to shake the establishment to such a point that it's going to cause a general election and bring change?
Well, because Middle Ireland will have no other choice. Middle Ireland's sons and daughters will have emigrated. Middle Ireland will be living in a house that the government wants to increase property tax on in order to eventually take it off them and get them to trade down. Middle Ireland won't be able to afford to heat their homes. They won't be able to afford to drive their cars. They won't be able to go out and have a couple of pints or a meal in a restaurant. A steak in a restaurant now is €35. You know, a meal for a couple going out, bottle of wine, 2 steaks is 150 quid. You know, ordinary people cannot afford that. And ordinary people, I mean people in relatively decent jobs, people who have come through the education system, people who are in their 40s and 50s kind of, who can't afford the basic things that you should be able to get if you're out working.
So what you're saying is that in addition to, I don't want to paraphrase, stop, you can correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is that in addition to the tensions all around the lax borders and all of the craziness in that area, because that's what it is, call it what it is, that in order for Ireland to change, it would require a hard recession.
Yeah, effectively.
Okay.
And
you know what,
have
Malachy? No, we leave it at that, because I think that's a very interesting analysis. I want to thank Malachy Steenson for coming into Counterpoint again, and it's going to be fascinating. It mightn't be very pleasant, but it's going to be a very fascinating time ahead. It'll be very interesting to see how all of this stuff in the United States is going to change the political tempo over there, if and how it translates over here. So there's a lot of movement going on, and we'll see how it goes. Malachy, thank you so much.
Great, thanks Eddie for having me.
And by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe to Counterpoint. You'll see the buttons below you. If you like this kind of content, please do catch it and send it on and move it around and talk to your friends and let them know about Counterpoint and the type of content on this channel which you won't get elsewhere in these type of broadcasts, on mainstream media. You just simply won't get this kind of discussion. And thank you so much for listening. And please do like and subscribe. Thank you very much.